4 years is a long time in sports. And yesterday, there was an NBA player poll on The Athletic. You should subscribe. There is excellent journalism there. And they polled the players, like 25, 30 of the players, percent of the players. And they got a bunch of great questions out of them. Best player, overrated underwear, all this stuff. And who was the most overrated player? Now, it would be very easy for me to bring the old hammer out because Russell Westbrook was voted the most overrated player. Yeah! Told you so. Told you so. But it's not really where I'm going to go with this. Where I'm going with this is also right beneath him was James Harden, tied for third. Okay, time out. 4 years ago, I think it's fair to say that Harden and Westbrook were often kind of bunched together. Terrific offensive players. Defense was more of a hobby. I did it occasionally when they felt like it. They weren't the easiest guys to play with. I think that was fair 4 years ago. And are these guys kind of into stats? These were all similarities between the two. But they are no longer similar players. Westbrook has kind of a relentless, crazy side. Harden, we've discovered, is almost a level below chill. Their personalities aren't the same. Westbrook has deteriorated as a shooter. Harden has never been more lethal. Westbrook's style and body is not conducive to longevity. Harden looks like he could play forever. Westbrook, I don't think he's the MVP of his own team. I think you could argue Harden's the MVP of the entire league. Westbrook, due to surgeries, is clearly on the back nine. Harden looks like he's right smack dab in the middle of his prime. Westbrook has often let down teammates. Harden, actually last year, was let down by a teammate who got hurt. These are not the same players. I was not a huge fan of James Harden when he came into this league. I have become a fan. Now, I don't think he's as good as Kobe, what the analytic people say. Kobe's more athletic and was the greatest tough shot maker of my entire basketball life. But James Harden's the best one-on-one player in the league. He has smartly been able to work with Chris Paul, who's got, at times, the opposite game, and yet they work well together. And I thought they would, and I predicted they would, because Chris Paul and Harden are smart guys, and I'm a big believer in business. Hire smart people. They'll figure out how to make things work. Westbrook has largely unraveled in recent years, deteriorated. Still a great talent, but sometimes just too rigid and relentless. That is not Harden. Harden has blown me away in the last couple of years. His game is elevated. He'll play forever. He's in the middle of his prime. He's the most unstoppable offensive force in the league. I would never want to face him. I'm not sure, like Kobe in his prime, you can actually stop him. And I like his personality. Works well with others. Actually trying to play a little better defense. He's not great, never will be, but he's not as awful regularly as he used to be. And I think because of James Harden and his ability to work with Chris Paul, I think they have a chance to make things very, very uncomfortable for the Golden State Warriors. Maybe not beat him, maybe beat him, but they'll make it uncomfortable because Harden has grown as a player, not deteriorated. Some agents believe Durant and Kyrie Irving pairing for the Knicks is inevitable. I just want to go on a little bit of a rant here for 3 or 4 minutes. I lived next to New York for 10 years in Connecticut. I'm really glad I did. New York's amazing, but I went there often. The best part was my company usually paid for it. It's really expensive, but I love New Yorkers, and I love the authenticity, and I love the city. Now, I mostly went to Manhattan, which there are 5 boroughs, and there's Bronx, and there's Brooklyn, there's Staten Island, there's even Harlem, there's everything. I mostly just went to the island. I went to Manhattan, right? And there's a lot of restaurants and a lot of energy, there's a lot of fry. So I didn't really experience the whole New York. I got all the the glitz and the glamour of New York, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I never wanted to move there. Ever. I had kids. I like space. I like a yard. I like a wiffle ball park next to my house. This idea that winning in New York is just better. Time out. So when Shaq and Kobe and Phil Jackson were crushing it in Los Angeles, They would all drive home at night saying, God, if we only lived in Queens and could play for the Knicks. I don't believe that. When the big three were down in Miami, Aqua Water, Winter League, I don't think they were thinking, gosh, if we could only have a cool pad in Brooklyn and me playing in the Garden. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles for a second wanted to be in any city but Philadelphia when they won. And I don't think the Red Sox or the Patriots ever consider New York a better place to win. They don't. They don't. I like New York a lot. The people, its history, the architecture, the energy. There is nothing better than a couple of nights in New York in the fall, 70 degrees, sunset, with your girl. Feel like the most important person in the world. But New York is actually one of the fastest shrinking states. Weather, taxes, density, whatevs. And it's not more special. People in Charlottesville this morning don't feel like they got jobbed because they don't live in New York. New York's great for born and bred New Yorkers, for a night, for a weekend, for the energy. But this idea that winning in Silicon Valley in a new arena next year will somehow be less cool than winning some games but not a title in Madison Square Garden is just a bunch of hooey. Don't get me wrong. New York does feel big. And I understand the Knicks have the number 1 or 2 valuation in the league. But the Mets also have a top 6 or 7 valuation in baseball because, it's New York. And New York has 15 million people. In fact, I could be wrong on this, but I think the biggest city in the country is New York. Second biggest city is L.A. Third biggest, I think I'm right on this. I think it's like Brooklyn. I think one of the boroughs is even bigger than Chicago. But fact, the New York Knicks have won 1 playoff series this century. Fact, they have the lowest winning percentage to the Knicks this century. Okay, we just saw an aging NBA star in LeBron James join a dysfunctional but legendary brand. It remained dysfunctional despite the aging star. And I understand New Yorkers have pride. So do people in Odessa and so do people in Minneapolis. But I got to be honest with you. Winning in Miami is really cool, especially since there's no state tax and I get to keep more of my money and the water is aqua and I live right on it and I have a boat and the league's in the winter and it's 72 degrees every day. And I also don't buy into this belief. It's just sort of the way a lot of people think that difficult is better. You know what? It's just better to have to dig a ditch for 12 miles to get that paycheck. No, I'd rather walk a mile and get mine. I don't want to dig a ditch. Winning in New York is hard. The media is hard. There's a lot of it. It's intense. There's a lot of drama. James Dolan is not an elite owner. I'm sorry. The front office could be good, and David Fizdale is certainly an upgrade, but it's going to be harder in New York because you're not going to have Steve Kerr and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and that culture, which is smart and thoughtful and, frankly, protective. But Colin, he would go there by himself. No, he wouldn't. I'm reading all the stories. He would go with Kyrie Irving. This idea he would just go to New York. He'd put a backpack on like a college kid going to Amsterdam by himself. I'm just going to go see the countryside. That's not at all what I'm reading. People like Frank Isola, who know their stuff and are not fake news, are reporting that Kyrie and Kevin would go together. By the way, just adding pressure that you better win now because you have a second star, and winning in New York is great. But winning in Boston's great, and winning in LA is great, and winning in Dallas and Atlanta, in Minneapolis and Ann Arbor and Austin, it's all great. Losing sucks. Winning's great, always. Always. Definitively. And I think winning in Silicon Valley beats being captivating, interesting, and not winning titles, which I don't think Kevin would, in a really cool city like New York. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.